The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It was not the angry kind that screams against windows. It was soft, endless, and heavy, like the sky itself was grieving. By dawn, the fields around the county highway had vanished beneath muddy water. Street signs peaked just above the flood, and a yellow sedan sat half submerged near the bend in the road. No lights, no movement, just the soft creak of metal shifting in the rising current. People passed it by. Drivers slowed, stared, and kept going. A woman jogging with an umbrella paused, narrowed her eyes, then kept running. No one wanted to get involved. Maybe it was abandoned. Maybe it was someone else's problem. But the dog knew better. He had no collar, no tags, only fur drenched black from the storm, and paws caked in road sludge. He had appeared from nowhere, silent, focused, purposeful. His ribs showed with each breath, and a thin gash along his hind leg left a faint red trail behind him as he limped across the flooded asphalt. He stopped beside the car. For a moment, he simply stared at it, ears flicking. Then, in one silent movement, he leaped. His body slammed into the driver's side door. Once, twice, claws scraping. Inside, something stirred. The dog, his name was Shadow, began barking. Not wild, not panicked, deliberate, urgent. His breath fogged the window as he stood against it, rainwater pooling around his paws. Cars slowed again. Someone honked. Someone else took a photo, but no one stopped. Only the dog stayed. Only the dog refused to leave. Inside the car, pressed between the front seats, was something no one had seen. A shape, small, still, a single pale hand resting on the center console. The rain fell harder. The dog barked louder, and finally, a voice whispered, barely audible, from within the car, so faint it might have been wind, "Help." Before we dive into today's emotional story, I would love to hear from you. From which part of the world are you watching this video? It is always amazing to witness our global community coming together. If you have not already, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell icon so that you never miss an update. Now, let us get right into the story. The moment the voice escaped the car, Shadow froze. Not out of fear, but recognition. Something in that fragile breath pulled at the frayed edges of memory, like a scent once known in another life. His ears stood stiff in the rain, tail low, eyes locked on the fogged glass. Inside, the shape moved a slow, painful twitch, and the hand that had lain limp on the center console curled slightly, as if struggling to reach something just out of sight. Shadow barked again, deeper this time, and pawed at the door until his nails scraped metal. The people nearby, those on their phones, those who had stopped to look, shifted uncomfortably. One man rolled down his window halfway, muttering something to the woman beside him, but no one stepped out. It had been a long flood. People were tired, suspicious, and they did not trust stray dogs. A boy named Eli sat in the back seat of a minivan, parked across the street. He was 7, small for his age, with solemn gray eyes and hair that curled behind his ears when it rained. His mother, Hannah, sat in the driver's seat, scrolling through weather alerts on her phone. She had not noticed the dog. She had not noticed the car. She was worried about the levee near their house. Eli, however, had been watching. Not the road, not the flood, but the dog. There was something in the way it stood, in the way it refused to leave the car. A kind of stillness Eli recognized, though he did not know how. He pressed his hand to the window. "Mom," he said, voice barely rising above the windshield wipers. "There is someone in that car." She did not look up. "It is flooded, baby. No one is in there." "There is," Eli insisted, "and the dog knows it." Hannah finally glanced sideways. Her face was tired, creased with weeks of poor sleep and longer worry, but when her gaze followed Eli's pointing finger, something in her expression changed. She saw the car, saw the dog, and saw the faint, fogged imprint of a hand on the inside of the glass. Across the road, Shadow barked again. He did not turn to the noise behind him, did not flinch when thunder cracked far above. His eyes never left the shape in the car. Somewhere beneath the waterline, inside that trapped vehicle, the girl was slipping. Her name was Maya, 19 years old, a nursing student. She had left her shift at the flooded field hospital 2 nights earlier and had not been heard from since. The road she had chosen was unfamiliar, narrow, and quickly swallowed by the storm. When the car stalled, she had tried to call for help, but the signal was gone. She waited for hours, curled on the seat, hoping the water would stop rising, but it had not, and the cold had become a second prison, just as cruel as the water. She had not seen the dog, had not heard the people outside, until now. When Hannah stepped from the car, she was already drenched. Her boots splashed through shallow water as she approached the yellow sedan, her hand brushing Eli's shoulder to stay behind. Shadow turned, momentarily, to look at her. His eyes were wide, not aggressive, but pleading. She froze. Something about those eyes, something about the way he stood between her and the car, made her chest tighten. She stepped closer, looked through the glass, and then she saw her. A pale face, eyes half shut, lips blue. "Oh my God," she whispered. "There is someone inside." That was when everything shifted. Shadow backed away as Hannah shouted for help. More people stopped. A man in a maintenance jacket appeared from a nearby truck, rushing to pry the door open. The dog limped to the side and sat, water up to his chest, watching. Every time Maya stirred, his ears twitched. Every time her breath fogged the window, however faintly, his posture straightened. It was as if he could feel her pain in his own ribs. Eli stood beside the minivan now, rain soaking his hair. He watched it all unfold, and he felt something strange, a feeling he would one day describe as being pulled. Not fear, not worry, but something like connection. The door creaked open. Water poured out. Maya collapsed into the arms of the man in the orange vest. Her breath rattled. Her skin was ice, but she was alive. Shadow remained at a distance, shivering, watching. His job, for now, was done, or so he thought. The moment Maya was pulled from the car, the world held its breath. The man in the orange vest staggered backward, his arms wrapped tightly around her limp body as her soaked shirt clung to her ribs like paper. Her eyes fluttered. Her lips were parted, whispering sounds no one could understand, just broken syllables between cold air and fading will. Water dripped from her sleeves. A bracelet fell off her wrist into the flood below and vanished. But her heart was still beating, slow, distant. But there Hannah dropped to her knees beside the rescuer, her hands hovering as if afraid to touch the fragile girl. "She is freezing," she said, her voice hoarse with panic. "We need warmth, something dry, please." A woman from the crowd rushed forward with a flannel jacket, followed by another who offered her shawl. The strangers who had once sat still in their cars now moved with urgency, their disbelief replaced by something remorse, perhaps. They had ignored the barking dog. They had watched without moving. Now they saw what that bark had meant. Shadow stayed back. He had not moved since the moment Maya was freed. His body trembled, not from fear, but from cold and exhaustion. One of his front legs was scraped and bleeding, and his breathing was shallow. His ears twitched every time Maya coughed, but he did not come closer. He had done his part, and the instinct carved into him to serve, to protect, had been fulfilled, until Eli stepped forward. He knelt beside the dog, his small hand brushing against the damp fur near Shadow's shoulder. The dog flinched, not out of fear, but out of surprise. His eyes turned those deep, amber eyes, and, for a moment, they simply stared at each other. Eli did not speak. He only placed his palm gently on Shadow's back, like one would steady a heartbeat. Then, quietly, he said, "She is going to live." Because of you. Shadow blinked, and for the first time since he had appeared that day, he moved. He limped forward, one cautious step at a time, his gaze never leaving Maya. No one stopped him. He reached the girl's side just as the paramedics arrived, and when the stretcher was rolled onto the pavement, he laid down beside her, pressing his side against the base of the metal frame. A low, gentle sound escaped his throat, not a whine, not a growl, but something in between. Something like a memory. Speaking. The medic hesitated. Whose dog is this? Hannah, still crouched, answered without looking up. He is no one's. He just came. The medic nodded slowly. Then he is hers now. Maya's eyes fluttered open, barely, but they did. And though no one could be certain what she saw in that moment, her hand moved. It reached downward slow. Trembling, Anne landed lightly on Shadow's soaked head. Her fingers curled into the fur. Her lips parted again, this time shaping something closer to a word. Shadow did not move. He simply stayed there, grounded like stone. They lifted her onto the stretcher. Shadow tried to follow. His body gave out halfway. He crumpled beside the wheels, legs folding awkwardly beneath him. One of the paramedics knelt, his brow creased. He is injured, he said. Deep bruising. Could be internal. Hannah looked at him, eyes widening. Take him to... We can only take one at a time. There is protocol. Then break it, she said, voice steady. He saved her life. He does not deserve to die outside. But the vet, Dr. Holden, did not think so. He told the papers, some bonds are beyond explanation. Sometimes, trauma burns a path between two souls. That quote was shared over 1 million times. More remarkable was what happened next. The family was contacted by an elderly woman named Irene Mason Rick, Mason's mother. She lived 3 towns over. She had never seen Shadow since her son's funeral. But when she saw the dog on the news, she dropped her cup of tea and wept. That is him, she said. That is my boy's dog. She arrived at the hospital within hours. Hannah, guarded at first, allowed her into the room. Irene entered slowly, with shaking hands and eyes full of 1,000 memories. She sat down beside Maya and whispered, "May I?" Maya nodded. Shadow opened his eyes. He looked at Irene. And then he did something no one expected. He stood shakily, painfully, but he stood. And he walked a few steps toward her. And then, with a low sound in his throat, he rested his head on her lap. Irene broke. She held his face in her hands and wept as though she were holding her son. No one came back, she whispered. Not his partner, not his body, not his badge, but you. You came back. That photo became the second one to go viral. A week later, a documentary crew arrived. Not for entertainment, but for tribute. They wanted to tell the story of a fallen officer, a grieving mother, a broken dog, and a girl who somehow whispered across death. They called it The Dog Who Waited. It aired online. Millions watched, and quietly, something else happened. A small boy in another city, who had been mute since birth, watched the video of Maya petting Shadow. The boy's mother claimed that after the video ended, her son turned to her and said, "I want a dog like him." A woman in hospice said she felt less alone watching Shadow's face. A teenager struggling with depression left a comment, "This story made me want to stay." The hospital received over 300 letters in 2 days. Donations flooded in, but none of this seemed to affect Maya. She remained quiet, close to Shadow, and said only small things. Once, Eli asked her, "Do you think he remembers?" Maya replied, "He remembers too much." And in the stillness of their room, the dog always watched the window, not like he was waiting to leave, but like he was waiting for something more, something unsaid, something unfinished. The machines in Maya's hospital room hummed low, like a soft tide beneath breath. The storm outside had long passed, but its aftermath lingered in the trembling bones of the building. In the flickering fluorescent lights, in the worn faces of nurses who had stayed through the flood, and in the heart of that room, on a child's bed still creased from too many sleepless nights, lay a girl whose world had changed the moment she touched a dying dog's fur. Shadow had not eaten for 2 days. His breathing was shallow, rhythmic but strained, and his eyes, those once alert, soldier-trained eyes, looked beyond the room, as if fixed on something only he could see. Maya sat beside him, her hand resting against his ribs, rising and falling in harmony with each labored breath. She did not speak, not much anymore, but she listened. Listened to the silence between heartbeats. Listened to the weight of air, thick with the scent of antiseptic and distant lilies brought in by a reporter. Listened to the invisible thread that pulsed between her and him, like a wire once frayed, now reconnecting with every moment they were not apart. Dr. Holden stood at the foot of the bed, his arms folded, shoulders heavy. The tests had returned. Shadow's internal injuries, lungs bruised, ribs fractured, an old bullet fragment near the spine were more severe than they had thought. His heart showed signs of degeneration, likely from trauma, neglect, age, and exposure. The cold had not helped. The vet's voice had been clinical at first, but as he spoke to Hannah, it softened. This was not just a dog anymore. This was something else. Something witnessed by too many to be dismissed as coincidence. He is surviving, Holden said, but not healing. Hannah asked, what would help him? The vet looked at Maya and replied, whatever it is, she already has it. They tried nutrition therapy, 4 fluids, oxygen assist, but Shadow resisted food, resisted movement, except when Maya was near. It was as if her presence kept his will stitched together, and her absence unraveled it. The nurse on shift, an older woman, named Maria, began spending her breaks inside the room. She brought old gospel hymns played from her phone, just low enough not to disturb, just gentle enough to soothe. One afternoon, Maria sat beside Maya and whispered, you know, I lost a child once. I thought nothing could make me feel peace again. But when I see the way he watches you, she paused. It is as if he is remembering something from long ago. Not pain, not war, but love, like someone he waited for finally arrived. Maya looked up and said softly, maybe I am not the first one he saved, just the one who stayed. That night, something changed. Shadow began to whimper in his sleep, not from pain, but from memory. His legs twitched, his nose twitched, and he made the same sound he had once made in the training yard of Officer Rick Mason when chasing a tossed cap, when dashing between cones, when being praised with laughter and applause. The memories were old, maybe unreachable, but they stirred. Irene Mason returned with a photo album, one thick with moments sealed in time. She sat by Shadow's side and opened it page by page. Do you remember this old soul? She said. Rick's graduation. You wore a blue ribbon on your neck. Shadow's tail gave a slow, tired thump. Or this. The time you barked at the governor's shoes until he smiled. Another thump. Then nothing. But Maya leaned forward, gently pressed her cheek against his side, and whispered, he remembers. Irene. He just does not know how to come back yet. It was then that Irene did something no one expected. She stood and said, bring the badge. Confused, Dr. Holden fetched a small wooden box Irene had carried earlier. Inside was Officer Mason's service, badge tarnished, but whole. Irene placed it near Shadow's chest and whispered, come home. That night, the machines began to chime slower. Shadow's heart stabilized. He slept, fully, deeply for the first time since arriving. His breath was less labored. He no longer trembled. And when morning came, he tried to stand. Maya gasped softly. He is waking. But there was more. As the hospital's chaplain entered for his daily round, he paused in the hallway. His name was Father Kent, a quiet man who rarely spoke unless asked. But that morning he entered Shadow's room, with a strange look in his eyes. He sat by the dog, bowed his head, and then said, "This is the second time I have felt this." "Doctor." Holden looked at him. "Felt what?" "A presence. Not a ghost. Not a haunting. But something left behind. Something that waited." He turned to Maya. "Did your brother ever mention shadows in the hallway before you were found?" Eli stepped forward, startled. "How did you know?" Father Kent nodded. It was not just the dog. It was the memory of something that carried forward. Sometimes, when people die suddenly like Officer Mason, they leave behind echoes. And sometimes, those echoes find unfinished paths. Maya said nothing, but her hand tightened on Shadow's fur. He opened his eyes, and this time, he licked her hand. The hospital staff wept. Even Dr. Holden stepped outside for a moment, hand on his mouth. Shadow's recovery had begun, not from medicine, not from surgery, but from love, pure, impossible, patient love. That evening, a candlelight vigil was held just outside the hospital, for Officer Mason, for all fallen canine handlers, and for Shadow. Over 100 people attended, and in the glow of that flickering light, Maya walked outside slowly. With Assistant Sand stood beside Shadow. He sat, and she said only one thing. He came back. The crowd stood silent, and as the candles shimmered and the sky folded into night, it became clear something larger than medicine had taken place. Something sacred. Long after the candles burned low, and the night folded into the quiet hum of dawn, the hospital room remained lit not by machines or fluorescent glow, but by the soft presence of something that had finally been set free. Shadow, wrapped gently in a blanket of calm, no longer fought to survive. He had already chosen to live. And beside him, Maya lay curled like a prayer unanswered for too long, now finally heard. Her hand rested over his chest, feeling not just the pulse of life, but the echo of a bond that stretched beyond time, beyond loss, beyond understanding. Outside, the streets had cleared. Reporters had packed their cameras. The crowd had gone home. But the story stayed behind, etched in tile and paw print, in bloodline and heartbeat, in the breath between one child's whisper and a dog's final promise. And perhaps that is what love truly is, not a thing we give, or earn, or claim, but a memory waiting patiently to be remembered. Something carried across lifetimes, waiting for the right soul to arrive and finish what was left undone. As the final light of morning poured through the window and touched their faces, Shadow stirred once more. He did not bark. He did not whimper. He simply looked into Maya's eyes and blinked once as if to say, "We are home now." And maybe, just maybe, you have felt something like this too. A silent pull. A moment when an animal looked at you not as a stranger but as someone they always knew. So now we ask, have you ever met a dog who remembered you before you even said a word? The medic stared at her, then at the boy beside her, then at the girl on the stretcher. After a long breath, he nodded. "I will radio for a second unit, have them bring supplies." Eli remained with the dog, his hand never leaving Shadow's. He will not leave her," he said, softly. Shadow stirred, just enough to lift his head again, and in that moment, it was decided. When the second ambulance arrived, Deit's doors opening with a hiss that cut through the storm, the dog was placed gently inside, wrapped in a silver thermal blanket, beside Maya, and for the first time that day, the storm began to quiet. The water stopped rising. The clouds began to shift. Inside the ambulance, as the doors closed, a silence formed between the girl and the dognet, empty, but full of something unseen, a bond not yet understood. The paramedic in the passenger seat looked back once and saw Maya's hand resting lightly on Shadow's paw, and the boy, Eli, watched it all through the misted window of his mother's car. He did not cry, he did not cheer, he only whispered to himself, almost like a secret. He found her before any of us could. No one saw where the dog had come from. No one knew how long he had been waiting, but he had waited long enough to save a life. The emergency ward smelled of rain, bleach, and soft cotton. White light hummed overhead as Maya lay still beneath a warm blanket, her eyelashes fluttering with each shallow breath. Tubes lined her arm. A small heart monitor pulsed beside her, steady, rhythmic, fragile. Shadow lay curled at her feet, a woolen towel draped across his flank. He had not moved in hours. His breathing was shallow, punctuated by soft groans that came from somewhere deeper than pain. The vet, a tall man named Dr. Holden, stepped into the room with a clipboard in hand. He looked from the girl to the dog, then to Hannah and Eli seated nearby. His brow was furrowed not with urgency, but with something softer. "You said he came out of nowhere?" he asked gently. "He was just there," Hannah replied, her voice raw, barking at the water, like he knew. Dr. Holden knelt beside the German shepherd. With a slow, practiced hand, he brushed the fur back from Shadow's side, revealing a set of old scars beneath the fresh cuts. "This dog has been through hell," he murmured. "At least 2 broken ribs in the past, fully healed. Lacerations along the flank. Bullet grazed just above the hind leg." Eli leaned closer. "Was he a police dog?" Dr. Holden paused. "Could be. Or military. Or worse, trained, abandoned, and left to die." He pulled back Shadow's upper lip. A number was tattooed inside, faded, but still readable. Hannah's breath caught. "He belonged to someone." Dr. Holden nodded. "A handler. These markings are only used in official canine units. But this number," he pointed, "has not been in active use for nearly 4 years." Eli's voice dropped to a whisper. "That means..." Dr. Holden looked at them. "That means this dog was declared dead." Silence settled over the room like fog, the kind of silence that carries weight, the silence that follows when the past begins to breathe again. Hannah stood slowly, stepping to the window. Outside, rain tapped gently against the glass. "So how did he end up there? At the flood?" Dr. Holden did not answer. Instead, he lifted a small folder from his coat and handed it to her. "I ran the number while he was sedated. There was a match. His name, Izor, was Shadow. Last registered to an officer, Rick Mason, Canine Division, Houston Metro. Deceased in the line of duty 3.5 years ago." Hannah turned slowly, her eyes wide. "But the dog is alive." "Yes," the doctor said, "but the man is not." And in that single truth, the entire room changed. Eli sat up straighter, his small hands trembling in his lap. Did he see it? His partner dying. Dr. Holden looked at the dog. Canine SR trained to run toward danger. Most handlers and their dogs form a bond that goes deeper than language. If Mason died in action, Shadow would have been at his side. Maya stirred slightly in her bed. Her lips moved. No words, just a breath, caught between sleep and memory. Dr. Holden continued. "There was an explosion and attempted rescue. The report said the building collapsed. Officer Mason died at the scene. Shadow's body was never recovered. They assumed he had been crushed or escaped into the woods, injured and feral." Hannah spoke quietly. "He was not feral." "No," the vet agreed. He waited. He looked down at the dog, those dark, weathered eyes now open, unfocused, but aware. He waited all this time for something or someone. Shadow stirred at that moment. His ears lifted slightly. His gaze turned not to the adults, but to the girl. Maya. She was no longer asleep. Her eyes, pale and distant, were open. Her hand moved slowly, reaching for the side of the bed, and her fingers brushed Shadow's fur once more. His tail twitched. Once. Then again. Dr. Holden stepped back. "He has chosen her," Eli whispered. Maybe he was waiting for her. That night, Hannah stayed by Maya's side, holding her hand as the machines blinked quietly in the shadows. She watched the girl sleep, watched the dog breathe, and thought of the man, this Officer Mason, whose name she would never forget now. A name carried in silence, in scars, in a dog's memory. Later, when everyone else had left the room and the hallway lights dimmed, a nurse wheeled in a small monitor. It was connected to the local police records database, part of a trial program for victims of trauma. She placed it gently on Maya's tray. "Would you like to see him?" she asked softly. Maya nodded. With a few quiet taps, the nurse pulled up a video, a training reel. In the video, Officer Mason stood in a field, calling out commands. A younger Shadow ran through an obstacle course, swift and precise. The camera zoomed in on Mason's face, kind, strong, proud, and then it focused on the dog. The same dog, Shadow, strong and eager, running with purpose, leaping through tires, barking joyfully as Mason clapped and laughed. Maya's eyes filled with tears. The screen dimmed. Shadow had not moved, but his breathing had calmed. His ears tilted forward, as if he had heard the memory himself. The past had not been buried. It had been waiting silent, breathing wounded, but still whole. And now, somehow, it had found a new reason to live. It began with the first photograph taken quietly by a nurse, only meant to document the extraordinary bond between a girl and a broken dog. In the frame, Maya slept on her hospital bed. Her frail fingers curled gently around the thick fur of a dog who had refused to leave her side. No filters, no captions. Just the image, Maya and Shadow, breathing together in silence, two beings, saved by each other. The nurse posted it privately, meant for a local canine support forum, but someone shared it, and then another, and then a news anchor picked it up, and the photo went viral overnight. By morning, Maya's hospital room was no longer quiet. Reporters stood outside with cameras, microphones, curiosity. A producer from a national morning show called the front desk and requested permission for a segment. The Flood Dog and the Silent Girl. At first, Hannah refused, but Maya had spoken just once since the rescue, and it had been only a whisper. "I want people to know his name." His name was Shadow. And somehow, Maya knew that before anyone had told her. Dr. Holden had shown her number records, no paperwork, no video. But when he leaned down in those early moments and asked, gently, "Do you want to name him?" she had not hesitated. She looked straight at the dog and said, "His name is Shadow." Hannah had blinked. "Did someone say that earlier?" "No," Dr. Holden had replied. "We had not told her anything." The boy, Eli, had whispered. Then how did she know? At first, no one answered. But it began to feel like an echo, like something ancient had passed between them. Not speech, not memory, something else now. As interviews were requested and online articles multiplied, so did questions. Not about the flood, or even about Maya's condition, but about Shadow. Who was he? Where had he come from? How did a K9 declared dead over 3 years ago appear at the exact location of a child's drowning, just in time to save her life? And how did the child know his name? That question became the headline of every major outlet within 2 days. Shadow's medical tattoo was verified again. Officer Rick Mason's service records were pulled, scanned, uploaded. Photos of him and Shadow, together in uniform, surfaced online. A memorial blog posted a grainy video from their final mission of smoke, of a collapsing building, and a final bark cut off by static. Viewers compared it with recent footage of Shadow in the hospital. The same eyes, the same gait, the same scar across the front paw. The world started to believe. Maya and Shadow were invited onto a local news show. Hannah refused at first, citing Maya's fragile health. But Maya simply said, "He wants to be seen." And somehow, that felt like reason enough. During the interview, the anchor smiled at Maya and asked, "Can you tell us what you remember from that day, when Shadow found you?" Maya looked at the camera, quiet and pale. Then she said, "I was under the water. I could not breathe. Everything was black. But then, there was light. What kind of light? The anchor asked. Maya turned to Shadow. The kind that walks. Later, producers replayed that line over and over. Commentators debated it. The kind that walks. What did it mean? Faith. Memory. Was the dog a messenger? Was Maya still hallucinating?